Laeren is the antagonist of Exandria Unlimited Calamity, and I know, that's a big claim, but we're going to get into that as we review this 5.5 hour episode of EXU. And despite this episode being 5.5 hours, at least for me personally, it did not feel nearly that long. In fact, this episode to me felt so focused. So let's go over some of the biggest moments. And the first big moment is the fight at the Navigators Guild. Here, Lycretia Hollow and many other high-ranking members from across Avalier fight the party. And it is here that we learn just how truly corrupt the entire city of Avalier is. Because these people aren't being controlled, they're not puppets, they are just simply wanting this event to occur. We don't, again, know exactly why or what's in it for them, probably just power and status, but they are working of their own accord. We also learn in the battle that Myla's friend is actually a devil with the smell of blossoms around them. And then with the arrival of an Arenes, which is a fallen angel in the D&D multiverse, we are seeing more and more devils flood into the city of Avalier. And this fallen angel goes and gets the blood of the Master's Chosen, goes and gets the blood of Xerxes. And exactly why he's the Master's Chosen, the Master being Asmodeus, of course, is unknown, or it's not explicitly explained to us during this episode, but we can put those pieces together. Xerxes is a paladin without ties to a god. He can naturally channel this divine energy, and we talked about this in the last Impressions video. This makes Xerxes incredibly powerful. And along with Xerxes meeting Asmodeus, this might give that betrayer god a link to the prime material world, a foothold that allows the Lord of the Nine to leave his prison. And finally, with this battle, I want to talk about Brennan and Marisha's kill of Lycretia Hollow. Specifically, how in this entire campaign, really, Brennan uses DM Fiat brilliantly. And DM Fiat is, rule 0. The DM makes the rules. They make these judgments about the game. And when interactions happen that would result in an amazing moment that isn't written down in the core rulebooks, Brennan takes those opportunities to really dive into those moments. And of course, I'm talking about specifically here how Patia uses Resilient Sphere on Lycretia Hollow as she's casting a Circle of Death, and the trapping of that energy within being what eventually kills Lycretia. You're not going to find that in any rulebook, but I believe with all my heart that it is those moments that help to make great DMs and great campaigns. I think we're going to remember that specific moment for a long time. But yet, after the battle is done, we get further insight into the plans and the actions of the followers of the betrayers. Firstly, Laeren gets a call. And this call essentially boils down to that the Arboreal Calyx, which contains the Tree of Names, wants 30% of the city's power. Laeren denies that order. This is because normally 90% of the city's power is already spoken for, and Laeren needs 50% of the city's power for her project. Now, based on information from later on in the episode, I think that the 30% of the city's power that the Tree of Names was wanting to take was to prevent extraplanar invaders. Whether this be Vespin Chloris, whether this be more devils, something is wanting to get into Avalier. But because Laeren denied the order, and look, it would have been easy actually for her to give 30% of the city's power to the Tree of Names. She would just need to have sacrificed her own project. But as we're learning more and more throughout this entire episode, probably everything that's going to happen in episode 4, we can relate really to the decisions that Laeren made in episode 3. And by the way, this is not an attack at Aabria or the character of Laeren or anything like that. This is this character's role in the story. Laeren is a focused woman who would do basically anything to achieve her goals. This was set up in episode 1 of Calamity. Now we can just look back and see everything that Laeren has done. And her actions, her specific and somewhat selfish actions, costing perhaps all of Exandria. But other calls begin to arise, and we learn that all of the city's Eldritch batteries are under attack, the 12 batteries. With Vespin's words in the first episode ringing in everyone's ears that the city of Avalier cannot touch down, that it cannot reach the Wild Mother's embrace, everyone begins to assume that the forces of the betrayers are trying to stop Avalier from landing, and therefore are attacking the Eldritch batteries. With this, the party attempts to help save these batteries, and they roll for it. And the cast rolls incredibly well for saving these arcane batteries, and I definitely surprised Brennan. I was watching his face during this time as he was starting to consider, oh, I might not have 4 or 5 Eldritch batteries down, and in the end, 11 out of the 12 batteries were saved. Honestly though, I think it just makes for a better story because it would have made it even easier to save Avalier. But we all know what happens. As the tithe to the Gouge or Sari requires about 25% of the city of Avalier's energy. Another 20% is spoken for with all these contracts that are headed up by the Golden Scythe, and many other wizards throughout the city. But as we learn in the first episode, Nydas and the Golden Scythe are tied to the replenishing. Many of their contracts will default if they don't have the replenishing, but that's only about 45% of the city's overall power. Laeren, though, calculates that she needs 50% of the city's total power over 7 years to complete the Astral Laerite. Now, originally 8% of the city's overall power was taken from the first use of the Astral Laerite, and with the loss of another battery, that's another 8% of the power lost. And so the head artificer calls up Laeren and says, well, what are we going to do? And Laeren shorts the tithe. And as we learn later on in the episode, this tithe used by the druids is to lock away the primordials. And probably not just lock away the primordials, but lock away all these dark entities that are trying to break into Exandria. And Laeren didn't need to short the tithe, because that's even more tragic, because 20% was just going to business interests. She could have shorted that. It would have caused great financial struggle to the city of Avalier, but she could have done it. She also could have shorted herself, understanding that in the moment they just don't have enough power. Maybe she could have left her notes and ideas for another cycle, to the next Apogee solstice, because that would have been the responsible thing to do for the city of Avalier. But let's consider this from Laeren's point of view, and this is why I give so much credit to Aabria Iyengar. Laeren believes she has a duty to the people of Avalier. What of these 3 options benefits the people of Avalier in Laeren's mind? That, of course, is the spoken 20% of power that is being used by the Golden Scythe and other businesses for contracts, and the 50% she's using for the Astral Laerite. The construction of a new ley line that would allow the city of Avalier to sail through the plains before returning after 7 years would be incredibly powerful. It would allow the city of Avalier to thrive like no other for 120 years. So it's not surprising in the slightest why she makes the decision that she does, but it still probably dooms the city. Not just the city even though, it probably dooms Exandria. But now let's move on to Patia and Xerxes, because Patia brings something up. After Evandrin died, succumbing to his illness, he went to Patia asking if there was some spell or anything hidden within her scrolls and records that could have saved him or bring him back, really. And Patia finds a true resurrection ritual. And Brennan candidly says this, that Patia did everything right in this ritual. She did it perfectly, but the ritual still failed. Now, looking at true resurrection, there are 3 reasons why the ritual would fail. 1, if the soul is not willing, and I would think that Evandrin would be more than willing to come back to his husband and his son. 2 is if the soul is not dead, if they're just somewhere else. And that seems to be the prevailing theory, at least until the 3rd option, which is that if the soul is not free, it will not be resurrected, if something else has possession of the soul. And as we see later on in the episode, this is the reason. I believe that Evandrin's soul was locked in the tree, and we'll talk more about this as we later discuss the Tree of Names in greater depth. But now we must discuss the later part of this episode and the truly earth-shaking lore that was dropped by Brennan that makes me completely reimagine how I see Exandria, or at least the time before the Calamity, and that I think in my mind 100% proves that the antagonist of this campaign, it's not Asmodeus, it's not Vespin Chloris, it really is at the heart of everything, Laeren.
Hey everyone, before continuing with the video, I just want to give a shout out to the channel's affiliate and sponsor, Only Crits. Only Crits is an online store that specializes in dice sales and 5e adventure modules. They also carry in stock dice trays and other assorted D&D accessories. I personally love their spell scroll dice trays and their duck dice. I mean, look guys, they're ducks in dice. If that's not gonna sell you, I don't know what is. They also have other little small friends, like chickens or pandas. If you're looking for a fun one-shot, I'd recommend The Emperor's End, or if you're looking for a full adventure, I'd recommend The Mountain Mountain Killer. It's a short adventure only running from levels 4 to 6, but it packs a lot of epic adventure and mystery in those short 3 levels. And it's set up so that you can drag and drop this plot into your homebrew adventures really easily. I've got an affiliate link in the description below, and if you enter the code DUNGEON, you will get a discount on your order. If you want awesome dice, accessories, or adventure modules, check out my friends at Only Crits. And now, back to the video.
The Ring of Brass begins to look through memories of one of the grunts that they fought. And as they're looking through, they can see Lycretia Hollow telling this grunt that they cannot allow the city of Avalier to reach the Wild Mother's embrace. But Sarat, being the incredibly perceptive investigator that he is, recognizes that this memory has been altered. They reverse engineered the memory and learn that it's actually the opposite. The city of Avalier must land, and it must land before sunrise. Now we learn the purpose of Vespin in episode 1, and Brennan makes a really good point. We learn why Vespin was there episode 1, and Brennan makes a very good point. Why would this villain just tell Sarat how to disrupt his plan? Why would you give them the key to stopping you? And that's because Vespin didn't give him the key. Lycretia Hollow, Vespin, and the other high-ranking members of this operation had a plan. They would put this false information out there so anybody who was trying to stop them would play directly into their hands. The heroes would be trying to get the city of Avalier to land, which is honestly kind of brilliant. But even after learning this information, Laeren says that the city must land. And god damn it, everyone in the city of Avalier is so selfish. Laeren is a character that I love to hate, because I understand exactly where this character is coming from, but they still get under my skin so much. And in this moment, the party splits. Sarat, who was acting the most rationally out of anybody this entire, let's say this entire mini campaign, goes to his office, while the other people in the Ring of Brass head down to the Arboreal Calyx, as it's obvious that it is one of the most important, or the most important parts of the plan for bringing back the Betrayer Gods. And as the party arrives, we see Laeren's caught astral layrite in the branches. It looks like this tree is blocking planar travel, and so Laeren wants to destroy the tree. But of all people, it is Nidas who steps up to stop Laeren. He reads the prophecy that he got and basically says, look, if you destroy this tree, we're done. But Laeren doesn't hear it. She is a product of the age. All she sees is the potential gain and progress and none of the danger. The mages of Avalier basically see themselves as gods. And so Laeren wants to blight the tree, shattering it and hopefully getting Avandrin back. And so the party begins to fight each other. At least all the party except for Patia. She doesn't care about this fighting. And in another example of DM Fiat and rolling with the story, as Patia places her hand on the tree, she tries to cast Legend Lore. A quickened, sloppier version of Legend Lore to try to gain the information within this tree, to learn about it. And Brennan, once again, obliges. We see visions of Ymir and the tree. We learn that the tree is a wall, a gate, and a pen. It is scribing the names of everyone across Exandria as the city moves. And we learn that the Tree of Names is essentially Exandria's bouncer at a bar. It's got a list of names in it, and if you're not on the list, it tries to kick you out. The Tree of Names protects Exandria from extraplanar threats. And as it's been moving along the ley lines, it's been basically casting a spell of protection. That's why there's not devils or demons everywhere. That's why it's so hard to move through the plains. The tree keeps Exandria safe in its bubble. Essentially, I think the Tree of Names is a proto-divine gate. It catches anything that's trying to break through the plains and stops it, or maybe catches it within its branches, and therefore its destruction would be catastrophic. What's more, we learn that the tree itself is connected to the primordials, that the druids count on this tree and use it to keep the primordials sealed under Mount Yagora. That's what the tithe is for. The druids count on the tithe to keep the seal solid, essentially. And in the last episode, we got kind of close to what the tree is. In order to be recognized as a god, you need to be recognized by the tree as a god. You need to manipulate this tree. At least that's the theory. And if you aren't recognized the tree, well, you go the way of many mages who attempted to repeat the matron's ritual. You're turned essentially into a paint smear. And it's also the tree that helps keep the Betrayer Gods back. And as Loquacious Seelie the Fae touches Patia and looks across the realms into the Feywild and sees the leader of his court, they look fearful. They know that something is moving across the prime material, and they give a warning. Don't let her find the name, but the name of what? And who exactly are they talking about? Because I've been a little dishonest with you in this video so far. Because while Laeren is the antagonist, the true villain of this campaign might be Patia. Patia wants knowledge at basically any cost. She is willing to bend the rules in order to make things happen. Patia replays Sarat saying that there have been some incredibly selfish actions. Who is Patia really? Because knowing Marisha Ray as a role player, there's something else there. While Laeren could find a name to something, it seems like that's more Patia's domain. Patia would be looking for something. I mean, like, Krisha Hall is dead, Laeren just wants to jump to the celestial plane. Who else remains? Well, that's Patia. And yes, while Asmodeus is a force that is weighing on all the characters, Asmodeus and the other betrayers almost feel like secondary antagonists. Yes, they are the consequences, but they're not what these characters are really fighting. In reality, the Ring of Brass and the city of Avalier are fighting themselves. And that's why I loved episode 3 so much, because it's an encapsulation of this entire campaign. Mystery, backstabbing, corruption, betrayal, and most importantly, self-inflicted harm. But before getting to the end, I want to talk about what was, I think, the most moving part of this entire campaign for me so far. Watching Travis, a father, going and trying to protect his children, honestly, I had a tear come to my eye, because there's something just innately beautiful as the apocalypse is going to begin, and Sarat knows this. You can see the moment that Sarat hears Laeren say that they must still land the city, he knows that the city of Avalier is fucked, and so he pulls the ripcord and simply is trying to save his family. And at the end of the episode, as he's flying to them, flying with these 2 spells, these runes of returning that can save them, I mean, what else is there to say other than it is tragically beautiful? And Travis Willingham doesn't get enough credit for just how great of an actor he is, and for how amazing these touching moments that he presents to us are. I would have never predicted this at the beginning, but one of the storylines I'm most invested in as we are concluding EXU Calamity is what happens to Sarat and his kids. Sarat will probably die, but if he can save his kids, I think that is beautiful. In a city of wizards with all this mind-bending, reality-warping magic, who in the end couldn't save themselves, it is Sarat, a lowly investigator without any magic, who in the end saves people and saves his family. At least that's what I hope happens. But honestly, I wouldn't put it past Brennan to have a scene where, as the city is falling, Sarat realizes that he can't save his kids. That's not what I want to happen, but just knowing that that possibility is there keeps me on the edge of my seat. But now returning back to the fight with the Ring of Brass, Xerxes and Laeren see Evandrin within the tree. He's stuck, trapped. And in that moment, Laeren blights the Tree of Names. And as the tree is blighted, it splits in half. And Vespin Chloris helps then to crawl through and push the tree apart, before in one of the most terrifying scenes, the Lord of the Nine enters the material plane. And now at the start of the final episode, we have the Ring of Brass facing down Asmodeus. I doubt they will fight him, but there is no doubt of one thing, that Avalier will fall. And while I'm dreading the episode, I also cannot wait for it. And if you need some more content to watch until then, please check out this video right here, and thank you for entering the dungeon.